The goal of this HRT system or these low dose therapies is to give the patient a low dose of a hormone, say low dose estrogen, to manage the symptoms of estrogen deficiency without giving her so much that pulls her out of a deficiency state. So she's always in a place of needing more. So there's always side effects and symptoms associated, even though the patient's on HRT. So the mindset is, let's just keep hormones low and keep them low at all times. And then there's psychotropic drug prescriptions written and a bunch of supplement sales to manage these symptoms. And if we look at menopause as this deficiency disease, well, then it gives us a different outlook on how we can address it. Hello, everyone. You're listening to the Menopause Moxie podcast, where we challenge the status quo on perimenopause, menopause, and female hormone balancing. I'm Marie Hoig, and I'm here today with my producer and co-host, Maggie Kuhn. Welcome to the show. The hype is loud and the branding is slick, but the truth is really missing. So behind every menopause campaign is a business model that's built off of women suffering. So menopause has become a billion-dollar industry, from supplements to low-dose HRT to memberships. Women are told that they're finally being seen and heard, while their mental and physical health continues to deteriorate and decline. So October is Menopause Awareness Month. In this episode, we expose how menopause misinformation has been repackaged as empowerment and why women are paying the price with their health. If you've ever felt let down by what you've heard about menopause, this episode will give you clarity and direction. So hello, Maggie. Thank you for joining me today.
Hey, Marie, another great topic for us today. So I'd like to just start right away with talking about, what is the traditional definition of perimenopause and how it's been discussed traditionally, because certainly when I was growing up, I'm guessing maybe it was the same for you, menopause was some looming, mysterious thing off in the future for an old lady. And when she hit it, you fell off a cliff, emotionally, mentally, health-wise, everything began to break down. So anyways, help us understand, what is the definition traditionally of menopause and how has it been discussed traditionally?
Well, yeah, menopause was always an old lady thing. The general consensus of menopause is that it's inevitable, that it is a state or a condition that women have. But it is agreed upon that it's a one-day anniversary of a woman no longer having a menstrual period bleed.
For a year, right?
For a year. So it's the 12-month anniversary of a woman not having a period. And then, of course, if a woman has a period in that time period, then that starts over, and then it's 12 full months. So as late stage perimenopause, women can have these long periods of time between menstrual cycle bleeds. And then there's a point where the estrogen gets so low that women stop having a period bleed. But the one thing with menopause that I find interesting is that people do think it's inevitable. Like it is, like it's a condition that has symptoms. And usually there's a bunch of symptoms that's associated with menopause, like hot flashes, night sweats, headaches, no periods, insomnia, joint pain, low energy, low sexual function, those sorts of things that many women throw in being the side effects of menopause. They didn't used to talk about menopause like you mentioned. It's just not something that was in conversation, but we are hearing more and more about it now. And I think the reason for that is because some celebrities are going through menopause and they feel like hell. And there's only so long a woman can suck up how badly she feels. And I think with this big movement, it really, they don't want things to end there. They don't want things to end at menopause because, like you said, it is the ending of a woman's life.
Right.
Society treats women differently. Women lose their brain function, so their performance declines, their cognition deteriorates, their physical body deteriorates and malfunctions.
But there's also a lot of other symptoms of menopause, or what the traditional definition of menopause is, that are things like tinnitus and joint pain. And, there's a whole lot of things that are starting to happen to women in, 40s, 50s, certainly 60s, that we don't realize are tied to this shift.
Many women are under the impression that menopause has all of these conditions. They don't realize that menopause is a side effect. And I do talk about that a lot on different podcasts, that menopause is a side effect. But there has been more of a social acceptance about menopause because more people are talking about it. Part of me is happy that there's this menopause movement and that people are talking about it and that it's now more socially acceptable to have a conversation. My concern with this, though I'm happy that the conversation is being had, I do have a few concerns about it because I do look at menopause quite differently than other people.
Yeah, let's hear about that.
I don't believe menopause to be a condition that women have to live with. I do believe it's a 1-day anniversary of 1 year of not having a period. That I do. And beyond that menopausal anniversary, there are 3 stages of post-menopause. And in our one of our perimenopause episodes, I talked about the 3 stages of perimenopause. And then there's the 1-day anniversary of menopause, and then there's the 3 stages of post-menopause. Now, I look at menopause as an estrogen deficiency condition that only takes place when women don't have enough estrogen and progesterone to regulate a healthy menstrual cycle. And because I don't look at menopause as an inevitable condition all women have to endure with all these side effects, it gives women a different outlook on what is the root cause so that women are able to properly address it instead of falling at the feet of it and suffering through managing the symptoms of it. So if we look at menopause as a side effect of extreme estrogen deficiency, where the brain is starved of estrogen, that it shuts all the regulatory systems down in the female body, including the menstrual cycle, then women can address it in a more empowering way so their brains and bodies don't fall apart. Menopause also can happen to any woman at any age for different reasons. So a woman can go into chemical menopause. So menopause is where the ovaries underproduce estrogen and progesterone that it stops the menstrual period bleed. And this can happen through medications. Conditions like Turner syndrome can contribute to menopause, the ovaries underproducing estrogen and progesterone. Medications women take, the coronavirus can put a woman into menopause. Stress can put a woman into menopause, but it's the estrogen deficiency that's causing the menopause. The average age, too, I wanted to mention is it's getting lower and lower, about once every 10 years, it appears to be dropping a year in age. So where the average age people stay, they've been saying this for years, the age is 51, but that's actually changed over the past couple of decades, where it's more somewhere between 48 and 49 women are experiencing menopause.
Wow. So who are some of the big name celebrities that are having this conversation? And again, it's been great that they're raising the visibility and taking some of the taboo off of the topic. But who are you talking about?
Well, there's several things going on simultaneously. One, Oprah made a menopause special that was very accessible, and a lot of women watched that show, and they did feel empowered, because it was very enlightening and hopeful, and that there are doctors out there who can help these women. However, they're the ones who paid for this program, the pharmaceutical companies. But Halle Berry is a celebrity that is associated with, I believe, MIDI Health. So she gets paid to be a spokesperson, as well as Dr. Claire Haver. She gets paid to be a spokesperson, and she prescribes low dose hormones. So she does a 2nd generation HRT protocol. which we'll learn more about the generations of HRT in another episode. And there's also social media influencers. There's some pretty funny women out there on social media that are, making a buck here or there off of the women suffering. But there's also medical experts like Mark Hyman is considered the godfather of functional medicine. He's been a big spearheader in the movement of talking about menopause for many years, and he's quite a popular expert. But also, as you know, Maggie, just recently the FDA had a panel on estrogen and hormone replacement therapy, and that too has also picked up the momentum here on the recognition of not only menopause but hormone replacement therapy. The conversation about the removing the black box warning
Right,
on hormones, that estrogen really doesn't cause cancer. So now
right.
it's the beginning of a new conversation. And this new conversation, as you know, is leading us down a trajectory that I don't think that we are really have begun to see the consequences of this conversation.
Yeah, so on the upside, it's less taboo to talk about menopause. Women's suffering in general, as a result of menopause, is being better understood, it seems, or again talked about. This black box warning and the FDA panel is very important because that was a result of the black box warning was a result of that faulty Women's Health Initiative study that came out in 2002, heralding that estrogen causes cancer, which sent a absolute freezing effect through women and prescribers for 2 decades. So this is good news. This is progress. But you're seeing some downsides to this, and I'd like our listeners and viewers to understand how you define menopause perhaps differently, and what you think some of the downsides or traps might be with this new conversation that's happening.
I'm with you. I'm glad that it's more open and we're talking about it, and that everybody can have a really good understanding on what this suffering that women go through is. It seems to be a big secret. But now we know women do feel miserable. But then the next question is, so what do we do about it? Is if estrogen is recognized as being safe and that it doesn't cause cancer, my concern is the amount that women will be given. Because right now, the majority of women seeking hormone replacement therapy are given very low doses. And they're using things like patch therapy, which is a second generation HRT, Premarin, Prem, Pro, Bias. Those are first generation HRT protocols. They're very old school, but they're designed to manage the symptoms of hormone deficiencies, but keep women in a state of deficiency. This is why it's really important to understand menopause as being an estrogen deficiency condition and not just a condition that's inevitable. Because what we want to do here is recognize what treatments are available, because women are going to be at the forefront of this movement, because they will go to the hormone doctors and ask for hormone therapy. And they will be put on low dose HRT protocols that will stop working in about 6 to 9 months. And then they're going to go back to the doctors and ask for more. And the doctors will say, I'm sorry, but that's all we have. These are the guidelines. This is all you get. But both you and I know that second generation HRT does not work for very long, and it doesn't fix the root cause of the deficiency.
Yeah, and when you're talking about second generation HRT, which again, we'll go more into depth in this in episode 6, but what you're talking about is low dose therapy.
Yes, patches, a lot of transdermal compounded creams. The goal of this HRT system, or these low dose therapies, is to give the patient a low dose of a hormone, say low dose estrogen, to manage the symptoms of estrogen deficiency without giving her so much that pulls her out of a deficiency state. So she's always in a place of needing more. So there's always side effects and symptoms associated, even though the patient's on HRT. So the mindset is, let's just keep hormones low and keep them low at all times. And then there's psychotropic drug prescriptions written and a bunch of supplement sales to manage these symptoms. And if we look at menopause as this deficiency disease, well, then it gives us a different outlook on how we can address it. And so if we're already talking about how miserable women are in menopause, then now we can talk about how do we train these doctors to prescribe HRT that allows women the choice of whether they experience menopause or not. So once we have a better acceptance of what menopause is, and that's the thing, is we have to identify menopause truly as the hormone deficiency condition that it is, because it doesn't exist in women with plenty of estrogen and progesterone. It just doesn't, nor do the symptoms associated with it. So if menopause doesn't exist, nor the symptoms associated with menopause doesn't exist, if you maintain certain estrogen and progesterone levels, well, would a 60-year-old woman like myself be considered menopausal? So these are the conversations I want to have here in the future, and for women to know, if you're on HRT, then chances are you're underdosed.
Mm-hmm.
If you find yourself still experiencing symptoms, even though you're on HRT, then chances are you're misdosed, and you're going to a doctor who does not have the training in therapeutic dose HRT protocols. Don't throw in the towel. Find a doctor who has that education, that training, and that experience to take you to the next level, so that your brain isn't estrogen starved all the time, that your brain is actually floating in estrogen, so that the rest of your body can function and perform at an echelon level, including that of the female reproductive system. And so this is why we see menopause prevention, because part of what reforms really is the uterus. And so the body wants to replicate a young, healthy, reproductive woman when she gets enough hormones, and that's what tends to happen.
So in the intro, you talked about this movement and that there's money being made off of women suffering. Who's making money off of women suffering?
Well, if women are kept, it depends on who a woman goes to. So if a woman goes to a conventional physician, the real money being made is not necessarily off the physician's visits, because really physicians don't get all that much. It's the pharmaceutical companies that these doctors write prescriptions for to manage the symptoms of hormone deficiencies that still exist. And then when these women realize it's like, okay, there's got to be something better than conventional medicine in managing my symptoms, it's not uncommon for a woman to stumble upon a functional medicine doctor. Now, functional medicine is an approach to medicine where a doctor of pretty much any specialty can get training on the approach of functional medicine, where the practitioner addresses the root cause of the problem, addresses the problem as naturally as possible. Well, and this is, as many people probably have heard me mention, if you've heard me on any other podcast, I talk about this is the area where functional medicine fails women. Functional medicine is designed to fix the problem as naturally as possible to full restoration. And to get to full restoration when it comes to estrogen, you need to give women an HRT protocol, an advanced HRT protocol designed for full restoration. But most functional medicine training, about 98% of functional medicine training, trains doctors to use low dose therapies, no different than what a conventional doctor would use, with the exception that they lean more towards bioidentical. So, women are still underdosed, whether you go to a functional medicine or conventional medicine physician. So the answer to your second half of the answer to your question is, the pharmaceutical industry makes money if a patient's going to a conventional medicine doctor. If they're
And what
going
kind of pharmaceuticals might someone be being put on?
psychotropic drugs, antidepressants, anti-inflammatory drugs. Women without estrogen are more susceptible to diabetes, so they'll be on diabetic medication, all the conditions, a heart medication, medications for fibromyalgia, medications for the gut. I mean, because really, when women lose estrogen, their brain and body completely deteriorate from head to toe. And so now, because the body is malfunctioning, the joint pain increases, the inflammation increases, because estrogen is the number one anti-inflammatory agent for women. So women without estrogen will have some form of physical pain, joint pain, bone pain, muscle pain, just aches and pains in general, just in an overall feeling of just feeling like blah, just yuck.
Yeah. What about things like UTIs?
Yeah, we'll cover UTIs in more depth in our clinical indicator series. But yeah, this is one of those conditions that women will get in perimenopause, closer to the second and third stage of perimenopause, because when estrogen declines, so do all the tissues and organs in the female body. And like the heart is an organ, it is a muscle, and it deteriorates and it atrophies when estrogen declines. So does the lungs, so does the uterus, so does the bladder and our plumbing. And so you have all these tissues collapsing and deteriorating. So the functions of the body underperform. And also, because a lack of fluid in our body, we're not flushing out the bacteria out of our vagina and out of our urethra. So we'll have more, be susceptible to greater bacterial content, which makes women more susceptible to getting UTIs and yeast infections and vaginal infections. So estrogen impacts the body on so many levels. And then women are taking medications for these things.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm getting at, is that to help our listeners and viewers understand that when we're saying that the pharmaceuticals are making money off of this, it's because, and even functional medicine doctors, if I'm hearing you correctly, are still not getting to the root cause, which is estrogen deficiency. Instead, they're treating everything around it, which are the results of estrogen deficiency. So, heart medication, diabetes, fibromyalgia, joint pain, urinary tract infections, you name it. There's all these things that there are specialties in medicine that a woman may be being treated for, when in fact the root cause is likely estrogen deficiency.
It is most likely that. And I say that with confidence just because it's what I've seen over and over and over. When you see hundreds of patients going through this transition who had these conditions before, who no longer have these conditions and are no longer need these medications because they don't have these conditions. You know, like when a patient starts up, it's like, well, do I stay on these medications? I said, yes, because until there will be a time where you will ask the doctor to get off of them because you won't need them any longer.
Okay, and when you're talking about this transition, you mean the transition of getting on to full
Yeah.
restoration, hormone restoration, and that the difference that can happen with
Oh
that.
yeah, there's a big difference, and that's why it's important to understand the difference between low dose protocols and therapeutic dose protocols. And that's what we'll get into in episode 8 when I talk about uh, how to reverse and prevent menopause with therapeutic dose HRT protocols. You'll get a clearer understanding on that. But the big point I'd like to make for women to understand is whether you go to a conventional medicine doctor or a functional medicine doctor, this isn't the end of the line. There's actually better, more advanced protocols that aren't out in the forefront yet. And when you ask me, Maggie, what I'm fearful of, my fearful of that the second generation, first and second generation HRT protocols will be the standard of care, and women will only get access to low dose protocols. Because if we do change the way that we treat hormone replacement therapy, these women with these hormonally related deficiencies, these conditions and these industries wouldn't exist, like you were saying. I mean, the cardiologist wouldn't be in business, the urologist wouldn't be in business, because we don't prescribe the same medications we used to before the patient gets started. There's really a transition into getting off of those medications. I also wondered myself, from time to time, it's like, well, if all doctors approached hormone or just female medicine by getting to, the root cause of the menopause, we can prevent and avoid it.
One of the biggest things that I understand is the issue here in the medical community is hormone replacement therapy. This issue, estrogen deficiency issue, is not any one specialty's area of expertise or responsibility. You would think it would be OBGYNs, but they say that it's not. You might think that it is endocrinologists, but they say that it is not. You might think that it's functional medicine, and they sort of say that it is theirs. But my understanding is that in all the specialties, there really is not anyone who claims ownership over we are the women's hormone replacement specialists.
Yeah, there right now is a lack of consensus on nobody can really agree on what hormonal balance is. I think that's something that needs to be defined, but I don't think that physicians who have never been trained on therapeutic dosages or have clinical experience with it should be able to weigh in because they don't have the same experience. The clinical results a physician gets who uses therapeutic dose HRT protocols is vastly different than what they get clinical results from their patients on these low dose protocols. That's why they still have to sell supplements to manage the symptoms and drugs to manage the symptoms.
Yeah. And I just want to clarify when I was saying that in the medical community, no specialty is saying that HRT or women's hormone replacement is their specialty. Doesn't mean that there aren't physicians and organizations out there claiming that they are experts. I'm saying that in their medical school training, none of them are getting this training because it doesn't fall into any category. So now
You're so right.
you've got doctors, prescribers, online clinics popping up to try and fill this need, but they're essentially sort of jerry rigging this.
Oh, they have no idea what they're doing. That's why I say they read the package insert, they go online and look it up. Okay, how do I dose this patient? I think that's a crime. I don't think any doctor should practice a field of medicine of which they've never been trained or had any sort of clinical experience. And doctors are not forthcoming with their lack of experience and education and training. But yet women are actually putting their brains and bodies in the hands of these people. It's like if you want to really control your mental illness, be extremely careful with who you go to for your HRT. If you go to a doctor who thinks estrogen is bad and it should be kept low at all times, well, then you'll always experience menopause and the menopausal symptoms, but you'll also feel like hell for the rest of your life and pay through the nose to manage the symptoms that otherwise wouldn't exist if you fully restore the hormones. This is why it's so important for women to understand what they need. What is menopause? Menopause is just not some anniversary and something that everybody celebrates. Menopause is a side effect of estrogen deficiency and progesterone deficiency. And even if a woman no longer has a uterus, she can still cycle if she restores her own estrogen and progesterone. I'm just tired of this whole buy-in that menopause is just oh so wonderful and we should all embrace it. Menopause is hell. It's hell for the woman going through it, experiencing it. It's hell for her family, the people she interacts with, because she eventually turns into a woman she does not like. And then she turns into a woman nobody else likes. And then she ends up, like I mentioned, watching crime shows and playing Candy Crush all night long and isolates herself from the rest of the world because it's just, but that's exactly how the human species is supposed to age.
How?
And
Explain that.
well, we're not supposed to be young and vital and reproducing all of our lives. We really do have a window of opportunity for that. That's why we only have a certain amount of eggs. And once we pass those eggs, once those eggs are used up, they're used up. But when we're in our early to mid 30s and our ovaries are supposed to shut down on purpose because we can't live forever and reproduce forever. Our body cannot keep up that level of health and vigor. And so really after a woman's second child, the ovaries begin to shut down and have a difficult time maintaining a healthy menstrual cycle or ovulation. And so the brain and body are supposed to respond to the estrogen levels. So as estrogen continues to decline through the 3 stages of perimenopause to an all-time low of no periods of menopause, the brain and body has been through this deteriorating process where it's malfunctioning and it's also designed to detach emotionally from society so that we can just go off and die without incident.
Well, and that was fine when lifespan might have been 50 or 55 or 45, who knows, or more recently 70.
Mhm.
But that's not the lifespan anymore. You know, women's life expectancy is well into their 80s. And I know many, many, many women and mothers of my friends who are living into 90, 100, beyond. And so this is condemning women to half their life being in misery. So, yes, on the one hand, you're saying this is the natural aging progression, but on the other hand, if we're going to live this long, we want to live well. We want to live healthily. And so it's not just lifespan, it's health span. And so, what can we do to be assuring our health span matching our lifespan? And
Well,
that is what I'm hearing you say.
yeah, and first recognizing menopause for what it truly is. And that's really why we're starting here. Well, we start with perimenopause and recognizing perimenopause for what it is. It is a 3-stage process of declining estrogen levels. And each stage of that perimenopausal process, estrogen gets lower and lower and lower. And women can control this decline. And that's what I want women to know. I'm not here to talk about, let's talk about the Menopause Awareness Month. Let's talk about how miserable women are. I want to talk about Menopause Prevention Awareness Month. That's what I want to talk about. Menopause Prevention Awareness Day, October 25th. I mean, we need to start looking at menopause as a condition because, as you mentioned, Maggie, women can spend 2/3 of their life hormonally out of balance. And yes, we are living longer. Stage 3 postmenopause is long and it's miserable. And so we can intervene. We can intervene before all this deterioration. And it's recommended to intervene before all this deterioration takes place because the longer a woman's body goes without estrogen, the less we can reverse. Because when you restore estrogen, there's an improvement of health and a restoration of tissues and organs. But the longer women go without estrogen, those tissues and organs, they shrivel and shrivel and shrivel and they'll malfunction. And the longer they've been shriveled up, like say the uterus, the harder it is to resurrect that organ so it can perform the way that it used to in a woman's reproductive prime.
Well, the other thing we're talking about here is that the diseases and conditions that women in menopause get, you know, uh, heart attack being and stroke being the number one, right, killer of women, osteoporosis, a broken hip. Most people who break a hip, and women are more often the ones who break a hip, die within a year. Some of the other conditions, dementia, Alzheimer's, women are more at risk for this. It's due to the deficiency that
Not
is
the
happening.
menopause. Yeah,
Right.
not the menopause. Menopause is a side effect. Remember, menopause is the 1-day anniversary of not having a period for a year. That's the menopause, the day. That's the anniversary. And it's caused by estrogen got so low. By the time a woman gets here, she feels so horrible. And then she's put on all of these medications. And what's interesting, Maggie, when you say things like the heart and cardiovascular disease, heart palpitations are frightening. And women will get those in stage 3 perimenopause, stage 2, stage 3 perimenopause, when their estrogen's declining because the heart is in this atrophy, kind of like in this quick, you know, atrophic state. And then so now the heart is palpitating, and then this affects our circulatory system and our blood pressure. But when you restore estrogen, I mean, I don't think I've really been trying to rack my brain here if I've known of any woman who had got another heart palpitation after fully restoring her hormones or shortness of breath when her lungs were able to restore themselves. I mean, and same thing with UTIs. I mean, I was getting them all the time, and I hear about it all the time. And I even hear the doctors grumble when I say, "Oh, this patient has another UTI. They need an antibiotic." So go, we got to hurry up and get him on estrogen. So I'm not constantly writing even the doctors that I work with know it's like I could either continue to write antibiotic prescriptions to manage all the UTIs the patient's getting, or I can restore her estrogen and she won't have another UTI as long as she lives. But our medicine model is not set up that we can talk this confidently about things because there aren't enough studies available that shows what happens to the female body when you give her full restoration. And this is where the studies need to come. These are the studies that we need. And these are
Yeah.
the ones that I advocate for is we need to know these things. I shouldn't be here on a podcast and having women and doctors here for the first time. Your patient will never have another heart palpitation if you keep estrogen in this range. or they will never have another UTI. This should be the consensus. And the fact that we don't have a consensus on all this tells me that people are not paying attention. And we need good studies, and we need doctors that are trained and that have clinical experience so they can see for themselves with their own eyes and speak with confidence. Oh, when I get estrogen in this range, these patients won't have these conditions any longer. And
Yeah.
that's my mission with all of this, with menopause prevention. It's one of the reasons why I'm an advocate for menopause prevention, because it's really about a woman being able to restore and reclaim or get for the first time who she is.
You touched on this lack of research. It's well known that women's health and women's health conditions are woefully understudied, under-researched, underfunded. And then the other thing kind of working us is the fact that the medical system in general is not set up to be preventative. It's about treating all the things that go wrong. So that's what our medical system is based on. So when you're talking about catching this, in perimenopause, stage 1 or 2, that's preventative medicine before the cascade of events happens where everything breaks down.
Yes, before the tissues and organs just disintegrate, before they really malfunction. And that we don't have to wait any longer. We don't have to wait. And that's the big message, is women have more control over how their brains and bodies deteriorate than we once thought. I mean, 2/3 of a woman's life she spends hormonally out of balance. This is ridiculous. And this is why I say there's just too many people, too many industries making money off of this suffering. You mean to tell me that we're the only ones that can stumble upon, and we're not. There are doctors every day that are stumbling upon therapeutic dose HRT, saying, oh, well, if I keep hormones in this level, my patients don't have these conditions. Oh, go figure. Well, how come we're not teaching that to doctors in medical school? Everybody across the board. Yeah, across the board. Even a cardiologist would benefit from this, saying, oh, you have heart palpitations. Okay, well, let's restore your hormones, especially your estrogen, and let's see if we can rebuild your heart with hormones.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of money tied to this. But like I said, I think the future of menopause, I truly believe, is women will realize just how much estrogen they need and how good they feel when they have enough of it. And then they'll say, okay, now who's deciding here how much I get? And how did that come about? Because from my understanding, it's because y'all thought that estrogen caused cancer. But now that it doesn't, why are we still going by these low dose studies that mean nothing? Let's get some studies on therapeutic dose protocols. Let's see at every range of estrogen how women feel in every range. And that's just data that's missing that we need.
So what can women do?
Well, I tell you, you have to work with people who know what they're doing. And it starts with you understanding what's going on with your body. Don't buy into the menopause is here to stay. I'm in menopause, and don't join the sisterhood movement of misery. I wouldn't jump on that bandwagon, because you have more control over how your brain and body function till the end, till death. And so if you want a consultation and talk to somebody who knows about this, then you can go to advancedhormonebalancing.com and book a free consultation and find out if one of our advanced hormone balancing programs is a good fit. We have the Hormone Sweet Spot program, and it's a brilliant program for women who want to fully restore their hormones. And so just learn as much as you can. And also listen to episode number 8. I'll give you more information on the steps that you can take to prevent and reverse menopause for as long as you choose.
Well, and I'll put a little plug in for our very next episode, episode 6, on the 4 generations of HRT, so that women will really be very educated by the time they get to episode 8 and can explain to their doctors what it is that they're looking for and wanting, and can recognize when they're getting second or first generation.
Or better yet, find a doctor who knows how to prescribe that protocol before you lay down thousands of dollars in symptoms management treatments.
Absolutely. Marie, if someone wants more information, you gave the website of advancedhormonebalancing.com. What else?
If there's something you would like us to consider discussing on this podcast, or you have a question you'd like us to answer on this show, then go to menopausemoxie.com/podcast and send us a message, and we'll be happy to consider it for the show. Also, if you've heard something on this show that you think one of your girlfriends should listen to, or a family member, then subscribe to this channel and you'll never miss an episode. And please share.
All right, Marie, I want to thank our listeners and viewers for joining us today. And as always, thank you for sharing your expertise.
Well, remember, everybody benefits when your hormones are balanced. We'll see you guys later.